What's good, everyone? Today we're talking about medial tibial stress syndrome, better known as shin splints. I'm going to tell you what they are, who is most likely to get them, and how you can get rid of them. Let's get into it. So even though the medical term is medial tibial stress syndrome, we are going to refer to it by the colloquial shin splints, because you and I, we've all heard of shin splints 100 times. You may have actually had shin splints. I know I've had shin splints, and it seems that it is something that gets talked about so often. But I was actually surprised at this. It's not as prevalent as you might think. In fact, shin splints accounts for only 5 to 6% of total running injuries in any given year. So in a typical 3-month high school cross-country season, typically between 12 and 15% of the athletes develop shin splints. I haven't actually had shin splints since around 2005. And that's because shin splints predominantly strikes new runners. Now, it's not just restricted to new runners. Experienced runners can also develop shin splints when they suddenly pick up the pace, when they start increasing that mileage. It's also been found that a large proportion of shin splint sufferers are in the military, or at least they're going through their basic training in the military. And that's because they are quickly increasing their physical activity. They're obviously running a lot more to get in shape for the military. And this is interesting. Women are 2 to 3 times more likely to get shin splints than men. Shin splints usually presents as kind of like an ache-in pain on the medial side of your tibia on the front of your leg. So it's kind of like on the inside where the calf muscle meets the shin. The area where you've actually got the shin splints can actually be pretty sore when you poke at it. And even though the pain starts off dull, as it progresses, as the injury actually gets worse, it can become a sharp pain. In the beginning, a lot of times runners will only notice it when they're done with their run. But again, as the injury progresses, people will start noticing the pain all the time, even when they run, making the running itself very difficult. So for a long time, shin splints was thought to be caused by the calf muscle, the way it attaches to the bone. So the muscle kind of attaches to the bone like this, and then when you exercise, it slowly works it back and forth. It creates little tears, creates abrasion against the bone, the way it's kind of pulling away from the bone. But we know now that that's not actually the case. So anatomic studies have shown that the muscular insertions into the bone, they don't actually correspond to the area of pain. So it's safe to assume that something else is causing it. So there have also been studies where runners with shin splints are given CT scans of their shins. And it's been shown that where the pain actually occurs corresponds to little pockets of low bone density in the tibia. So because of these pockets of low density around where the pain is actually located on the tibia, scientists now hypothesize that the cause of shin splints is actual impact on the tibia. So when you're running, the tibia obviously takes the impact, runs through it, but it doesn't just stay straight. It flexes slightly as you run. Think about how the beam of a bridge bends slightly when it takes on weight, like a car driving over it, and that bending puts compressive forces on the medial side of the tibia. I actually bought a prop for this to show you how it actually works. This is a chopstick. But for this example, I want you to imagine this is a tibia. So when you run, it bends slightly. I don't want to break this, so I'm not going to bend it too much. But it bends slightly, just like that. Now, ordinarily when runners run, they will break down those muscles, they'll break down their bones just a little bit, but then the muscles and the bone builds back even stronger. And that's how our bodies adapt as we get better at running. As we progress in our journey of running, our bodies respond to the stress responses, and they make themselves stronger because of it. That's the reason that military recruits, that's the reason that new runners develop shin splints at a higher prevalence than the rest of the running population, because they haven't had adequate time to build that stress response. The bones haven't had a chance to build back stronger than they originally were. So because of this new hypothesis, the hypothesis of the tibia bending and putting compressive forces on the medial side causing shin splints, we now know that shin splints is actually on a continuum. And this is going to be scary to hear, but it's on a continuum with shin splints being a fairly minor injury at one end of the spectrum, with a stress fracture being pretty serious at the other end of the spectrum. Well, I guess a compound fracture would actually be on the other end of the continuum, but a stress fracture is still going to be pretty close to that end, right? We don't want a stress fracture. We don't want to get to the point where we have a crack in our bones, because for that we have to take at least 6 weeks off, and no one wants to take 6 weeks off. My friends, if you like learning about running and chatting about running with me, or if you're a runner and you've ever had a running injury, go ahead and give this video a thumbs up. Ultimately, that is the highest praise that you guys can give me, and it just tells YouTube to send this video out to other runners who may find it useful. Okay, you've got shin splints, or you think you've got shin splints. You've got some pain in the front of your tibia, on the medial side, kind of where the calf muscle meets the tibia, and you're wondering, that's all well and good, Matt, I've got it. Now what do I do to get rid of it? All right, I'm just gonna go right out there and say it that rest is a pretty good option. Rest is a pretty good option for healing this injury because ultimately we're trying to reduce the stress on the tibia, right? We got this because we are increasing the impact forces too much. We're breaking down the bones quicker than they can repair themselves. So obviously resting for a week, maybe 2 weeks is gonna let that bone repair and hopefully come back stronger. But if you're anything like a typical runner, rest is probably the worst thing that you can hear. So here are a few things that you can do other than rest. You can increase your cadence, increase your stride frequency. Now there's a reason you've heard that 180 steps a minute is the ideal cadence. Now it doesn't have to be exactly 180, 170 to 190, that's all well and good. But the point is when you have that kind of cadence, you are definitely not overstriding. And when you overstride, you increase those impact forces on your entire body. And your tibia is part of your body. So if you increase the impact forces on your tibia, that could be a reason for your shin splints. Just increase that turnover as you're running, and that's an easy way to lower the impact forces. That is the primary reason that you hear 180 steps a minute is the sweet spot. Okay, so it may be fun to think that if I run on softer surfaces, that's obviously going to lower the impact forces on my body. And while that's true to a certain extent, did you know that your leg actually adapts to the conditions that you're running in? When you're running, the actual forces that go into the ground, they barely change at all. They barely change at all from a nice soft trail to running on the road, a hard, packed asphalt road. The leg adjusts its stiffness to compensate for the surface. So keep that in mind. If you think you're just gonna go and run on trails or run on a treadmill, that is probably alone not gonna do anything to help you. So this next one is probably the most important, and this is what I am gonna stress that you do, and that is to strengthen your calf muscle. This is your tibia, and this is your calf muscle. It's kind of wrapped around the back of it. The stronger it is, the bigger it is, it's gonna create more support for your tibia. In fact, the stronger your calf is actually makes your tibia even stronger. And it's been demonstrated that female runners with a smaller calf circumference have a much higher risk of developing shin splints. So it's probably not going to come as a surprise that runners with weak calves are more likely to develop shin splints. So if you're watching this and you do have shin splints right now, or something that resembles shin splints, I know sometimes it's hard to admit we have an injury, and it's not too bad. You can still go out for a run. There's a couple of things you can do. So obviously I want you to increase that stride length, I want you to lower the intensity, and I want you to lower the distance that you run. Obviously, if you have a medical condition, I would rather you go to a doctor and run it by them rather than just listening to some guy on the internet tell you about shin splints. But just because you have shin splints doesn't mean it puts an end to your fitness journey. I tell you, the best thing you can do is get in the pool and do some aqua jogging. That is going to mimic the whole running form perfectly, and it's going to be no impact on that tibia. You're going to maintain your aerobic fitness, and you're going to let that tibia heal and come back nice and strong. There was a study that showed that taking 200% of the recommended daily value of a calcium and vitamin D supplement reduces the chances of a tibial stress fracture by 25%. I'm certainly not telling you to go and take vitamins. I just wanted you to know about the study. And obviously a tibial stress fracture is way on the end of the spectrum away from shin splints. Now is the time for you guys to let me know about your running injury history. Obviously I want to know if you've had shin splints, especially if you had them at the beginning of your running journey and how you got over them, if you remember. But now would be a good time to tell me about any running injury that you've had. Go ahead and write in the comments below. And I've had quite a few of running injuries over the years. All right guys, my name's Matt. As you know, I post new running videos at least twice a week. Be kind, be happy, run well. I'll see you in a couple of days.